taken. King
Oh,
G2, he missed it! Oh my gosh!
G2 draw there, Robert.
And he slaps himself in the face. He cannot believe what's happened here.
It's the big fat losers battle for third place in the Speed Chess Championship 2024. With the white pieces, we've got none other than Mr. Nans Niemann, a man who loves swimming in his spare time, and with black, Hikaru Nakamura, the blitz and bullet beast. What happens in this game is unreal, and what happens in the match is even more out of this world. Scoreline to come. Let's dive in. We see e4 on the board, and Hikaru goes solid. The ponies jumping into the game. The Roy Lopez on the board, named after J-Lo's uncle, and now knight f6. The solid Berlin defense. Hikaru no doubt inspired by this former world champion, current world champion, and Hikaru's current tennis partner and best friend. Now we see d3, covering that central pawn. Bishop c5, aggressive placement, c3, castles, and now surely you can take that knight and pick up a pawn in the center. Well, without going down too many ninja lines here, the reply is d5, and black brings this big pressure on the center. Think this kind of stuff, the king stuck in the middle of the board, and there's some initiative. Different gravy. We're not going down that line. Instead, we see the move of bishop to g5. Very aggressive, and Hikaru now drops back. What a wimp, but he breaks the pin. Knight bd2, d6, castles, and now knight g4, foraying forth and offering the bishop exchange, which is taken. Now queen recaptures, and d4 for the score. Hands takes the center, and Hikaru, so shocked, completely forgets which way to move his pieces. That one back on the Etienne back row, and now after h3 he now retreats a second one. These knights retreating faster than my hairline. Now rook e1 played, and b6 to develop. Is he going to fianchetto to a rook? We'll soon find out, because after knight f1, what are you doing back here, thinks dad. Absolutely ashamed. We see bishop b7. Sanity prevails as that one hits the long diagonal, and with pressure on the pawn, the knight now bounces out, covers the center. g6 stops that one sallying forth into f5, and now queen d2 connects the rooks onto the dark squares. Niemann drumming up a big attack, so Hikaru fights back, kicks the bishop, then kicks it again. It drops to b3. Is he helping his enemy pieces though? Actually go into good squares? We'll soon find out. He connects these rooks, and after queen h6, the queen is in the danger zone. You have to react. The advance of the c pawn is selected to attack the center. Very thematic. If you're getting attacked on the flank, go in the center of the board. And after knight g5, the whole army plowing in, Hikaru has to react. You know, if you go say like this, just a random waiting move, here's an example of how you can bring the attack. And now if you go c4, one move too late, well bang, this move comes. Hit the queen, threaten mate, and after pawn takes, there's rook g3. Huge threats here, and if f4, then there's this. Check, rook drops, and that's a mate. Amazing lines. So you have to fight. Shut down this bishop. It's played. That's why it drops back to c2. Now rook fe8, and it's just in time to give that queen a square. So the knight backpedals, anticipating this, getting the queen out of dodge, and now this rook centralizes. Hits that lady on d2. a4 from hands, taking the tin opener to the queen side. You should slide back with the rook, according to Stock Squid, but not played. h6 instead, and it allows this takes, opening the a file and deadly invasion. But Hikaru bunkers down now with rook b8 covering the bishop, and hands doesn't find the right plan. b3 is one nice idea, opening another file. Or h4, h5 looks really natural, but he plays this weird knight move, sticking it on the edge of the board. Is he a real grandmaster or a very naughty boy? And now we see rook ed8 from Hikaru, met by a very, very naughty move. This is surely a big boo-boo. Pawn to d5. Sure, you take away the c6 square, but you allow that knight into c5. not ideal, and after rook e8, rook f1, Niemann now starts thrashing but not committing to a plan. Is he going to push the f-pawn? After knight h7, he decides not. The queen slides into e3, always fianchetto your queen if you're not sure of what to do, and after rook f to a1, dominating the file, now Hikaru has a seahorse pawn. Rook 1 to a5, the pawn under fire, so that's why the bishop gives ground, opens the eyes of the rook, and here hand doubles up, looks absolutely amazing, but somehow the knight bounces back and Hikaru's just covering all bases. How does he do it? Queen e1 played, given the mistake, and suddenly black's that bit better. Incredible defense, just holding on, now trading a pair of rooks, and after knight f3, the queen re-enters the game here. Queen a1, rook b8, this is a long game, so we're going to keep rattling through. Where's Niemann's plan? They're running low on time now, but hang on a minute. He attacks this knight on c5 and he actually sets up a tactical threat. Will Hikaru spot what it is? Well, who knows? He's getting a lot older, right? This is what Niemann's banking on. Have a listen to this pre-match interview.
But he's 36. Like, there's going to be a time when Hikaru's sitting in his pineapple shirt and he's not playing chess anymore, and he's just going to have to watch me win tournament after tournament. He's going to be too old to even compete. Like, my reign is going to last so long that he's going to be at the age of like like he can't even walk anymore, and I'm still going to be winning.
And sure enough, Hikaru, 36 years old, he plays king g7, blunders in his old age, because now Niemann can go bang, takes on e5, and if pawn captures, the knight drops, the d-pawn's running, the queen's invading, it's absolutely horrendous. So Hikaru fights back with queen to b6. We see knight takes here. The f knight taking looks so natural, but this one selected. Now the queens leave the board, rook recaptures, and after f4, not best, f3 actually better to hold the center. Niemann's looking to steamroll Hikaru in the center, but does have to be careful of this pawn. But before he can do it, Hikaru fights with this pawn push here. Now we see knight e2 rotating, takes, pawn recaptures, rook b2 invading, but not the best. Knight c5 most accurate, because after this, you encourage the knight to d4, where it not only protects the bishop, but supports an attack. Knight c5 comes, the pawn under fire, and now the best move, missed by Hans Niemann. He should go pawn e5. Very powerful push, because if you capture this pawn, then you've got this e6 shot. And because this knight's on d4, the knight from c5 can't capture it, and this one's caving in here. By the way, if you try and block like this, there's this, this, and this. Awesome lines here. This is how white was winning, but missed. No e5 played. Instead, we see this check. Now the king steps away. You know, there was a pin, you couldn't capture it. And after this move of check, the king now stepping back, we see knight takes on c5, but Hikaru doesn't take. Give Hans the instant runner. First he takes the bishop on c2, now pawn e5. The game getting so sharp, they're playing on seconds. Captures is played, now d6, we've got ourselves a runner, but Hikaru creates one of his own, just keeps munching pawns. You can play d7 immediately, but Hans holds off. He gets a bit tricky, but not in the best way, because Hikaru takes another pawn. Now he wins the minor piece, but there's 3 pawns for that piece, and look at the power of this rook. The c pawn running, the knight under fire, so king f2 desperately marches into the defense, but now we get pawn to c3. On its bike, run Forest. Now this check's played. King h7, rook d7, and this is the big problem. You can't move the knight or the rook drops here. You can't get the knight around to defend for the reasons mentioned. What to do if king e2, then you play c2 anyway, and the pawn's running through. You just can't stop it in time. So with Hikaru now keeping Hans in a bind, we see pawn c2, rook takes with check, king goes, now the rook back, drops back the piece, and we reach this endgame. Hikaru is a pawn ahead now. pushing. Technically a draw, but he's in the driver's seat. He wants to press Hans, who gets back a second per move, but still has very little time. Here comes the king, and the pawns trying to make progress. Gives this check, bounces the rook around, and now this great move, breaking up the pawns. If captures is not ideal, this one drops. So instead we get king g7. Pawn takes, king g6, and after this move here, we don't see the pawn captured because now you run into this check and then the rook dropping. So instead rook a3. Masterful play by Hikaru. Now using this white pawn as a shield, a kind of umbrella pawn to march in his king, then bring the rook around, and what to do. If you wait with the king, the black king marches in. So this one gives ground. The pawn drops, 2 to the good. Still technically a draw here. We see a liquidation of pawns. This is how the game proceeds, and now things go absolutely nuts because after this move of rook to e3, Niemann has a number of options to keep it a level position. Just don't go to the highlighted squares. But what you mustn't do is the move he plays, which is taking the rook on e3. Absolute massive blunder, but rumour has it at that very moment a wild Danny appeared in his head, completely threw him off his game, caused him to make this blunder, and now after pawn captures, yes, the king can run over, but when the black king steps in, king e1, pawn e2, you're absolutely busted because you have to give ground. Then the king comes, and of course this one marches through, mate the queen, and I think Hikaru knows this checkmate.
Taken king g2, he missed it!
Oh my
G2
gosh.
was a draw there, Robert.
And he slaps himself in the face. He cannot believe what's happened here.
This was the final position here. What a crush by Hikaru Nakamura to turn that around and then take the match by this scoreline. Hope you enjoyed, and for another incredible game from this match between these two players, have a look at the video on screen. Cheers.